But first, the inevitable has come to pass. The question as to whether or not it would be in season or postseason, and it happened to be in season for the Los Angeles Chargers, firing their head coach Brandon Staley following this is hard to believe, a 63-21 loss to the division rival Las Vegas Raiders on national television on Amazon Prime. And keep in mind, this is a Vegas Raiders team that had not scored more than 20 in 11 of their first 13 games. They drop a 60 burger before we even get into the fourth quarter. So listen, the fact of the matter is this was the firing that needed to happen as soon as last year. Obviously, the Jacksonville Jaguars coming back from a 27-0 deficit on these Chargers, on this coach, Brandon Staley, just a week after he'd made the inexplicable decision to play multiple starters in a game that meant nothing for the Chargers in week 18, such as Mike Williams, who missed that very pivotal playoff game against Jacksonville. Look, it had to be done. As far as the numbers are concerned, Brandon Staley is a defensive coach. And one thing that we know is a general rule for coaches. This is why I think Robert Saleh's done a really good job with the Jets. I'm hearing rumblings, hey, Saleh might be gone. I think that'd be crazy because bare minimum for Robert Saleh on his side of the ball, Jets are good defensively. Jets are one of the better teams in the NFL defensively. That cannot be said about the Los Angeles Chargers because they hire Brandon Staley going into the 2021 season, and they rank 20th in that span since 2021, 20th in pass yards per game allowed. This is the Chargers defense, 20th in pass yards per game allowed. That's their best defensive stat. I'll go further. Second worst run defense in the NFL, fourth worst points per game given up, and fifth most yards per game given up. So they can't stop the pass, can't stop the run, can't stop teams from scoring points on them. And again, their head coach is a defensive guy. Now, I don't want to be, anytime a head coach gets fired, it's obviously a very sensitive topic because of the simple fact that these are human beings. Brandon Staley had to go home, I would imagine, to his family and tell him that he had been relieved of his duties today. And it sucks, especially given how last night's game played out. So for Brandon Staley, the human being, for any coach that loses his or her job, I feel bad for that person. But from a business standpoint, from a football standpoint, it had to happen. There's no question about it. And it's compounded upon because the fact that the Chargers could have hired Sean Payton. Sean Payton, according to, I remember hearing Terry Bradshaw say weeks ago, yeah, Sean Payton, who worked with Fox in Los Angeles, wanted to go to the Chargers, wanted to coach Justin Herbert. And for an offensive guru like Sean Payton, would a guy like Justin Herbert not be just a dream for a coach like him? I mean, he turned Drew Brees, whose career looked to be all but over after the shoulder injuries, helped turn Drew Brees into a first ballot Hall of Famer and breaking a bunch of records. So who knows what he could have done with Justin Herbert. You see now what he's doing with Russell Wilson. With the Chargers ownership, the Spanos family, a little cheap, not big risk takers. And this is what you get. As the old saying in life goes, you get what you pay for. And you think about the last three seasons. The last game of every of Brandon Staley's three, really more like 2.5. The last game of every season Brandon Staley has coached for the Chargers have all been abject disasters. The end of 2021, his rookie year as a head coach, they were playing a playoff game against the Las Vegas Raiders. So ironically, his coaching career ends in Vegas, which is where that game was played against these division rival Raiders, albeit different coaching staff, different players. But you follow me here. 2021, last game of the season, his quarterback, Justin Herbert's playing out of his mind, converting fourth down after fourth down, threw a touchdown pass to send the game to overtime on the last play of regulation. It was a wild, wild football game. The stakes of that game were simply this. If the Chargers won, they'd be in the playoffs. If the Raiders won, they would be in the playoffs. However, if in the rare instance there were a tie, both teams would have made the playoffs. Well, the game was tied with 1 minute to go in overtime. And if that minute had passed, Chargers in the playoffs, Raiders in the playoffs, everybody goes home happy. Raiders had the ball, and they say, you know what? We get in the playoffs anyway. Let's just bleed the clock out. Let's not waste anything. Let's not try and be too aggressive and blow our chances of getting in. What does Brandon Staley do? As the Raiders, admittedly after the game, we're trying to run the clock out. Calls timeout. And the Raiders are like, okay, let's just go for the win. What the heck? We can make the playoffs either way. Let's knock our division rival out of the playoffs. And that's exactly what they did on a Daniel Carlson field goal to send the Raiders in the playoffs and send the Chargers home. Inexplicable coaching error. Last season, up 27-0 against a Jacksonville Jaguars team with a quarterback who I love, and Trevor Lawrence, who threw not one, not two, not three, but 4 first-half interceptions. He was a disaster. And the Chargers somehow managed to lose that game in large part because of their inability to call plays, to run the football with Austin Eckler and with their other backs, to bleed clock. I mean, at that point, listen, you're not playing the Jaguars when you got that kind of lead like that, especially when their quarterback Lawrence is struggling. Bleed the clock out. They did not do that. Inexplicable coaching error, which I said I thought he should have lost his job the day after. And then last night, yes, I get Justin Herbert is out. Yes, I get you're an underdog. Listen, the Chargers, nobody would have criticized the Chargers if they lost by, say what I predicted the score to be. I picked the Raiders to win 20-13. I thought it'd be a little bit of a defensive struggle, but I said the Raiders, albeit they got shut out just 5 days ago, okay, by the Minnesota Vikings. I said, you know what? The Chargers have a terrible pass defense, as I just detailed a few minutes ago. They'll make enough plays. Devontae Adams, they'll make enough plays to win this game. And it's 21-0 before the first quarter even has time to conclude. That's coaching. That's not having your team ready to play. And he had to go. Now, it is not, at the time of this recording, I'm recording around 3:30 in the afternoon Eastern time. It has not been announced. I'm checking my Twitter feed right now. It has not been announced as to whether who the interim head coach is going to be. It looks like it's going to be Kellen Moore, former offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, about to be former offensive coordinator of the Chargers, now about to be, in all likelihood, the interim head coach. Obviously, to test the waters, you see how that works. But the fact of the matter is this had to happen. I have been a Kellen Moore critic for years now. I think he is not near as creative as he often gets credit for. I think Dak Prescott's success with Dallas was in large part in spite of Kellen Moore rather than because of it. And I think we're seeing that with what Dak is doing with Mike McCarthy calling plays. This had to happen. At least the Chargers made it at some point. The inevitable was going to occur. It was about whether or not it was going to be in season or after the season ended in week 18. And it happened in season and in pretty embarrassing fashion. Again, final score, Raiders 63, Chargers 21. It tripled them up. They tripled them up, literally. It's bad. And by the way, Easton Stick, he did throw 3 touchdowns, but a couple of those were in garbage time, and Chargers had multiple turnovers. It was just a disastrous night from start to finish. I mean, I like Aiden O'Connell. I like some of the things he brings to the table. I think he has a potential to be a solid, good backup in the NFL, and that's not a shock because listen, Your backup long time in the NFL, Brian Hoyer's made a lot of money, okay? I think Aiden O'Connell can be like a more mobile Brian Hoyer, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Brian Hoyer's took teams to the playoffs before. But Aiden O'Connell is not good enough to have a passer rating of 120, with all due respect. That is coaching. And again, you have Khalil Mack. You have Derwin James. You have some star players on the defensive side of the ball. It's one thing if the offense isn't working. You can put that on Kellen Moore. You can put that far more on Kellen than you can put that on Brandon. But if you're Brandon Staley, your defense has to be good. And it's not. It's not. I mean, if you are coaching one side of the ball, that side of the ball needs to be good. That's like if Mike McCarthy were calling the plays in Dallas and the offense was terrible. That's on McCarthy. It's just as simple as that. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.